I can keep things go. Ready to go? Everybody ready to go? Okay, take a deep breath. Here we go. Assuming this button works. Nope, that button does not work. There we go. Okay, good evening, good morning, wherever time it is, whatever part of the world you are in. Pop quiz, those of you, I assume everybody is able to access the chat box now. Where are you from? Please type your country or region or culture, if you will, into the chat box. Where are you from? Germany, France, India, wow, Sweden, more Germany, Austria, marvelous, Netherlands, Poland, Britain, wow. Netherlands, living in Germany. There's a bizarre, it's not too different in the cross. Poland, currently in Vietnam. There's a cross-cultural adventure if I've ever heard one. Oxford, is Oxford a culture? Oh boy, it is. Dutch living in Italy. Wow. Fabulous, fabulous. Welcome everyone from all over the place. This is marvelous good fun. And this is going to be a rather unusual webinar because this is not one of those lectures where the expert stands up and tells you everything about culture. In all modesty, I don't consider myself that much of an expert on culture. I've collaborated with a couple of colleagues on papers. But today, instead, I'm going to share with you a new perspective to see how you might interpret it and use it for your research, practice, teaching, and even learning. I believe we have a classroom full of people attending. Big shout out to a whole class, which is a great way to do it, the live and online at the same time. Woohoo! Yes. Athene. So what I'm going to do today is begin with a brief overview, then narrow down on the topic, and I'm going to describe 5 structures of logics, causal logics, and I'll provide examples. And then with each of those, I'm going to ask you if you have seen those logics or examples of those sorts of thinking or behavior occurring in your research, consulting, management, classrooms, family, society, the news, whatever area you are interested in. My secret plan here is that by the end of the webinar, we're going to have so many insights from so many people that some of you are going to be able to put all this together into at least a paper, if not a book. We'll worry about the movie later. So fantastic participation from all over, and away we go. A little bit about me. In our research stream, we found that theoretical models that have more structure are more likely to be effective in practical application for helping people to understand the world and reach their goals. And as a consultant, I provide training to other consultants and teachers, professors on how to use an easy knowledge mapping process with students and clients. And these experiences have helped us to understand both the strengths and limitations of theoretical constructs, models such as the globe framework, and theories such as intercultural entrepreneurship. And those insights in turn have helped us to find new paths forward to advancing scholarship and practice. Now, of course, whatever we do, whatever we think, whatever we say is based on some kind of structure of logic. And now here I'm using the term logic in an unusual way. Most scholars think about inductive logic or deductive logic, also known as inductive and deductive reasoning. But today we're going to talk instead about causal logics. And one key idea here is that there seem to be very few forms or types of causal logics. Let's see, where's my pointer here? This should work. So there's very few causal logics. There's a large number of dimensions, and there's just a huge amount of observable behavior. And the logics will be inductive, deductive. And I hope if I'm sharing my screen, you're not seeing the chat box. The dimensions, for example, Globe or Hofstede might include assertiveness, masculinity, individualism, relatively few of those, and simply a huge number, a range of observable behaviors. But that's all way too complicated for my little mind. So I scaled back to work on something relatively simple like this. I was working with Chiara Cannavale from University of Napoli on a presentation last year with SIETAR Austria conference in Vienna. And we were investigating the causal relationships between cultural dimensions and entrepreneurial dimensions. So I started to wonder, would it be possible to look at a culture from the perspective of the logics themselves? And I found just a little bit of literature in the area. For example, this study on persuasion in different areas of the world. North America, we tend to think in terms of very factual-based and inductive logic. In Russia, the tendency seems to be to persuade people with axiomatic or deductive approaches, while in some Middle Eastern countries, the approach tends to be more affective and intuitive. And if we can better understand these differences, if we can understand those underlying logics, we can improve communication and learning between cultures and perhaps even our own also. We see this in national cultures also. China, the approach tends to be a focus on the whole and an expectation of cyclical change, while in the US, we tend to focus on individual parts and expect a linear change. For an example, when the stock market rises, a lot of people in the US might think that it will rise forever, while people in China might think that any upward movement suggests that a downward movement in the stock market will happen later. Key idea here is that different logics may lead to different actions, even though they have the same data. Key point, this will be on the quiz later. No. Sorry, no test. We can also see these differences in the way people have thought about the world over time. In ancient times, in some regions, it was believed that empires and individuals would rise to dominance and then decline and collapse. Same with individuals, same with empires, it's all the same. Importantly, with that kind of logic structure, it's easy to understand how they would believe that everything is destiny. And if everything is predestined, why take any action at all? In contrast, in modern times, many cultures seem to have an underlying linear example. For example, here, many organizational planning processes and policy planning, they say we're going to learn, we're going to do research, we're going to create a plan, we're going to take action, and we're going to reach our goals. And there will be, everything's going to work out perfectly according to plan, right? Yeah. But you notice here that action then is required because the results seem achievable. Now, you notice here we're not talking about reality or truth. We're talking about people's ways of thinking that changes the way they understand the world and the way that they take action in the world. For just one final emphasis here, we might have reality here, which consists of all sorts of variables that are all interconnected in some way. And even though you have one culture that's looking at things in a circular way that suggests that action is not necessary, another culture might look at the same data in a linear way and suggest that action is not only useful but also required. And those differences may lead to misunderstanding and conflict. And since, of course, there is certainly a need to develop better understanding of culture, and it seems that these structures are everywhere, all latitudes and longitudes of the planets, possibly universal, that it seems to be a darn interesting area for study. So let's dive into the next part. I'm going to present 5 structures of logic, and here each of these bubbles represents a variable, and where one and the arrows represent causal relationships. So if we say there's an increase in A, that's going to cause an increase in B, it might cause an increase in C, whatever those variables happen to be. And similarly, a decrease in A will cause a decrease in B, cause a decrease in C. Very, very simplistic, abstract, but seems to be the very nature of these very simple structures of logic. So I'm going to explain each of the structures individually and provide examples. And when I explain the structure, I want you to think about your experiences and observations, what you've seen in your culture and other culture, families, businesses, civil society, classroom, textbooks. And I want you to provide examples to supplement mine by typing your insights into the chat box. Very briefly, any questions before we start? The chat box is quiet. Okay then, away we go. Now the first logic structure is very simple, and you could even say that there's no logic here, or vanishingly little logic. There's no causality. Things simply are. And of course, that can lead to arguments about truth and reality and all sorts of conflict. Metaphorically, it's like a single drop of water, or having a single variable. Of course, what's more important than science? What's more important than philosophy? What's more important than religion? It is, of course, sports. And for this variable, we're just going to say that my football team is the best. There is little or no why it is the best or what happens because it is the best. It is simply a straightforward truth claim. It just is. And which leads people to suggest that Barbara, yes, atomistic, always doing things like that in this company. Yes, good. So does this atomistic logic structure resonate with you on an emotional level? What examples do you have? Where have you seen this kind of thinking? Seems to be Donald Trump's logic. Indeed, we've done some analysis that makes it look like that. Very good. Ethnocentrism. Jackie, tell me more. Oh, ethnocentrism itself is an atomistic approach. Yes, our culture just is. Everybody else's is not. And the idea that an event has an identifiable cause. We'll get to more causal relationships later. More examples out there? Let me ask Barbara, Lutz, Jackie, Ursula. Do we know what cultures you're looking at? Trump, of course, is American. Ethnocentrism could be anybody. Barbara Ormsby, what is this company that what is your cultural perspective, Barbara, and what is the culture of the company? USA first, Netherlands second. Are we talking a sports scores here? Students often say this is the system, can do nothing otherwise. Nadia, yes. What kind of students are those? What cultures are those from? Jackie Crawford, people in stress. Yes. I think that's an excellent psychological perspective. People under stress tend to resort to more simplistic thinking, sort of a black and white binary. Companies act quite atomistic. Yes. Ante, which companies in what cultures in particular do they seem to act atomistically? And what is your culture that it makes you think that that's what they look like? Barbara, Austria, good. University students from Algeria, interesting. Ursula, could you say a bit more about Tolman's logic? Yes, briefly. Give me a moment. Let's wind down this particular island logics. Ooh, interesting. UK and Japan island logics. That would be an interesting exploration as compared to an Asian logic with a very large population that's very closely interconnected might relate to a more complex and relationship and logics and understanding. Isn't it? Kadarzanya. I want pronunciation assistance with some of these names. This is marvelous. It stretches my mouth. Isn't it a typical logic for religious fundamentalism? Frequently, I believe that is the case. Oh, yeah, good point. Hopefully everybody, when they are typing in something in the chat box, Kazia is okay, thank you. Make sure it goes to all participants, all panelists, everyone. We've also done studies. I mean, you simply look from my culture's religious perspective, the 10 Commandments are very atomistic. Do this, don't do that. Little or no exposure to alternative cultures. Yeah, education seems to help people have more complex causal relationships. Yes, some people are still not seeing all the comments. Please address your comments to all. Binary logic asymmetrical, part of a system of belief. It can go anywhere. Interesting. Works when you're part of the environment. From all panelists and all attendees setting. Yeah, that's probably the safest way. That way, make sure that I see it also. Companies act, we are the best, and don't care about the consequences of their production in the environment. Very good, Ante. Very good. Oh, interesting insights. Oh, this is fantastic. This is more than I could have hoped for. This might be enough for a book and a movie also. So a quick question here for those of you who are looking at the big picture, the synthetic thinkers among you. Do you see any meta-level insights after reading through all of these comments? Are there any preliminary conclusions or insights we might draw from this? We're locked into Western thinking categories. Atomistic logic structure linked to a culture or a personality? Very good questions. You have to save those for the end where we're going to bring up potential research questions. Unwillingness to see the other. Unwilling or unable. Atomistic, can't cope with the changes. Goes back to the insight about people under stress. When we're more relaxed, we can think broader, but as the world gets more complex, it forces the individual to think smaller. Blinkered thinking, tunneled vision, yes. I see the world from my point of view, yes. It's hard to see it from any others. Can't change to cope with the changes. The big man leader model of leadership, yes. It just goes. You don't have to question the logic. So much easier that way. Maybe we start in life thinking from this logic. Yes. Ignorance. Binary. Oh, very good. Teacher-centered methodologies as compared to synthesizing. Nadia, we should talk about synthetic teaching methods. We'll bring that up later on with mapping methods. Not helpful in a multipolar, multifaceted, connected world. Yes, I can't be a foreigner. I'm British. Oh yes, jolly ripping good. Yeah, can't deal with complexity. Marvelous. Keep them coming. If you have more insights, feel free to put them up there. I'm going to address a question about Tolman's logic. Tolman's logic has been sort of the gold standard of logical thinking ever since the scientific revolution, essentially saying that if you're going to make a truth claim, you have to back it up with I'm going to forget the exact details here. Evidence, supports, warrants, all these things. It's interesting to consider that one part of Tolman's argument is that you can look at it, I don't know, sort of sideways and see that you are making an argument both of logic and of evidence. And I think that's where it has the greatest strength. And Tolman's logic can be used to analyze, understand causal logics. But here I'm simply talking about causal relationships as they might be understood through a careful research project or simple observation. So I hope that is a sadly brief and incomplete expression of Tolman's logic. I think it's related, but I don't think it's the ultimate form of logic. It is one form of logic that's quite useful, but I like to focus on causal logic because the part about having evidence is well enshrined in science. Okay, different is strange, nice but scary. Yes, indeed. Oh, foreigners adapting to ours and not to them. Ah, yes, very binary, very atomistic. Okay, awesome, awesome suggestions and insights. So let's go on to, if I can push the right button, the next structure of logic. We're going to talk about a linear structure here, and metaphorically, we have one tap. It's sending out one stream of water going through one funnel, and the same stream is coming out at the end. For our football example, if there's more training, there will be more playing, and there will be more winning. All clear, simple actions with predictable results. And if my football team trains extensively, they will win. Very simple, very straightforward, and very predictable. Now, your turn. Linear logic in the context of your research in life. Does this resonate with you emotionally, perhaps more so or less so than the atomistic structure? Where have you seen this kind of thinking? Yes, best solution, excellent. Well, best solution is, that sounds more atomistic as compared to economics. Yeah, more money, more expenditure, more profit, and there doesn't seem to be any limit. It just keeps going. Linear logic, classic Western, yes, versus agile, which tends to be a bit more complex and interconnected. Have you seen this in any theories in the literature? More refugees cause more problems. Straightforward. We can end the discussion right there because that's the result. Study, great job, wonderful life, very good. Sales, yeah, the more doors you knock on, the more items will be shifted or sold. Yes. Dominant but obsolete. Oh, Carlos, quotable, very nice, thank you. Male-based logic. Fact, no emotions? Ooh, Jackie Crawford, we should talk about that. Where do emotions fit into a logic structure? It sounds like a whole new dimension to explore. Leadership development solely on the talents of individuals? Yes. If you do this one thing, don't change anything that's working. Right, which leads to a competency trap. Linear logic, if you learn about the cultural dimensions, then you'll be more culturally competent. Haha, very good. Yeah, it takes more than simply learning. We have to get out there and live it. A positive outlook? Stimulus response, very clear, very straightforward. Where is chance and serendipity? You can't control everything. Lutz, good point. You have to build that element into it. Very good. Synthetic thinkers, your turn. Meta-level insights. Is there something we can glean or understand from all just by reading the responses? Is there some sort of theme here? Input, output, no external impact. Yeah, you're still ignoring a lot of factors, Rob. Comfortable way of looking at life, yes. And if something happens that's not expected, well, who could have predicted that? Which is sometimes used in press releases. Meta level, yes. Barbara Ormsby, One Direction. Assumption of control. Oh, very good. If you click on panelists and attendees at the top of your chat link, we will all be able to see your point. Oh, Jos Blikers, you are sending to panelists, not to attendees. If you could re-click that. Lutz Steiner, also, you are chatting to panelists, but you should also be chatting to attendees. Oh, a wrong sense of certainty, for which we have to ask, are we certain? Assuming that A always leads to B. Maria de Los Angeles Tajina, you are also broadcasting only to panelists, and you should be broadcasting also to panelists and attendees. You want to click on the box at the top there. Yes, we are in the assumption that we are in control. Yeah, it's interesting. These the logics also seem to relate to a lot of assumptions. Very good. Logic equals certainty, stability, safety, security, where there is really nothing there. There's always something coming in around the long range. Goal-oriented rather than process-oriented. Good. Okay. Excellent comments. Very good. Just a minute. The chat box goes back to the default once you close and reopen it, and the default seems to be panelists. So please, all participants, check your chat box to see, keep it open, so that and make sure you're broadcasting to all panelists and attendees. Ooh, Patty, requires obedience, not initiative. Now I'm curious, Patty. What is the okay? This is the meta level. Sorry, you're looking at the conglomeration of all the previous chats. Okay, very good. Let's go on to the next logic. Leaves out the intuitive. Yes, perhaps the intuitive is more atomistic, or the fuzziness that surrounds the atomistic view. I'm not sure. These are very interesting additional perspectives. Okay, the next one is the branching logic structure. And this is where one event or one change in one variable causes many other changes to occur. And this is sometimes associated with magical thinking or wishful thinking. Here we have one tap, one control, and strangely somehow we get cold water out of one side and hot water out of the other side. And if my football team wins, then my personal relationships will improve, the gross domestic product will improve, and my nation will be great again. Ho ho. Yeah, okay, enough of the politics. Again, your insights, does this resonate with you? This might be related to what some people were talking about of emergence or surprise, things happening, many things happening out of one result. Another example of this was the United States war on drugs, where if we just say no to drugs, then everybody will have a job and everything will be wonderful. But where have you seen this? Classroom, home, research, civic life, coffee shops. This is all politics. Vote for me and you will get everything. A, B, C, D, E. It's a little bit linear in one direction, but it's more complex because you have a sort of a multilinear structure, if you will. So if you narrow it down, you'd have one linear relationship, but with this structure, you have 2 or 3 linear connections. Branching structure seems to present with cultural intelligence, CQ concept, CQ effects, impacts performance, happiness, income, many things. Cultural quotient. Some coaches, trainers use this rhetoric when promoting their services. Yes. Seems to be a classic. There you go. If we just fix this one problem, then everything will be fine and wonderful again. If we change the CEO, then everything will be great again. Naive optimism. Yes. Now, Veronica, is this naive optimism with everyone in the world or with a particular culture? And what is your cultural background? And Yvonne, also, if we change this CEO, which culture is that company working in, and which culture are you in that you have that particular view? And for the meta level thinkers, is all advertising like this? Is all, we've seen several versions of marketing where you just do one thing and you get many amazing results. Is that everywhere, or is that not not everywhere? Is there alternative versions of marketing? Perhaps strategy has a branching logic. Every strategy has a branching logic. I would think it's certainly possible, but we're just working with the simpler structures here. We can get into more complex stuff in future presentation. Does it suit Trump's slogan, "Let's make America great again"? That's part of it, perhaps. And Nadia, you are going to just the panelists, not to attendees. So please repost that so everyone can see it. Barbara, CEO change just in Austria. Countries with a big power distance. Oh, interesting point, Barbara. Yes. With greater power distance or even greater intellectual or knowledge distance, it's easier to make big claims. Yes, as in with the naive, wishful thinking. Yes, it'd be nice if it worked. Oh, to have naivete once again. Fire flames seem to suggest which nation will be best, but all people working fossil fuels will be out of a job. Positive and negative results of one action. Yes, again, this is very simplistic. With more refugees, yes, Ursula, good point. The negative side of things. With one, if my team fails to win, or if we can have more refugees, then there will be problems. Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again." That sounds rather atomistic to me, because everybody has a fuzzy understanding of what great is. Religion in Brazil, if you join our church, you'll go to heaven, get a good job, improve your life. Very good Brazilian perspective. Saw this thinking when I lived in India. If I get good marks, then everything will be good. Interesting. Now, Shirley, did everyone else see that also, or did they simply buy it because as a young person, you don't know that much about the world, so you accept this sort of sales approach that one good thing will lead to, doing one good thing will lead to all sorts of wonderful results? Yeah, and if one bad yes, Patty, one bad thing happens, the rest of the day goes bad. Oh, and Patty, you sent that to just the panelists. If you could retype that for the attendees also. If one bad thing happens, the whole rest of the day is awful, and everything goes bad. Trying to think, it seems to me I have seen that with people that are sort of emotionally unstable. One thing happens and they blame it on everybody else, and they make everybody else's day miserable also. Halo effect, X is friendly, also must be smart. Ursula, please repost that to everyone. That just went to the panelist. The halo effect, if one person is friendly, then he or she must also be smart, successful, good looking, and you could do that the other way around. There's a correlation between the height of people's heights and their perceived leadership ability, or their good looks and their perceived leadership ability. Agreement with Brazil also. Yes, if you lose 20 pounds, better job, great husband, more money. Yeah, I don't know. I could lose a few pounds myself. Western romantic love, the one right one, and everything is going to go wonderfully in so many different directions. Okay, great, wonderful insights. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Great stuff. Time management, just going for a walk, and everything is wonderful. Okay, let's go to another logic structure here. Whoops. Too many logic structures at one time. This is the circular logic structure, and it's a kind of tautology when it comes to argument. Things keep going around in circles. It's sort of a wheel of fate that suggests change happens naturally. We suggested this before. No action is really required. Yeah, something happens, and the team gets better, and they go to the championship, and then they decline, and then something else happens, and the whole cycle starts all over again. We don't know why this something happens. Maybe it's a new coach, maybe it's a new player, maybe they just get lucky. People start to add in their belief as to what that one thing needs to be. So it's a little bit like the linear, but it's going to feed back, and whatever happens will happen again. And more of it. This for those who are into systems thinking, this is sort of this could also be a feedback loop. So hypothetically, it could be that perspective where if one thing happens, it'll go up and go down, and another perspective is it'll just keep reinforcing itself. So the circular logic structure, does it resonate with you emotionally? Where have you seen this in your work, and in what culture? Patty McCarthy, please, please repost to all panelists and to all attendees. Yes, very Indian. Is that the stock market example? Yes, for many people, the debate about global warming seems to go around and around and around. Yes, and a presumably positive approach, the plan, do, check, act, is supposed to lead to continual improvement. Taoism, a good example. Coaching kata, yes, just a continual cycle of improvement. Circle of life, don't get me started. I'm not that good of a singer. Property prices rise and fall. Inshallah. Self-fulfilling prophecies in politics in Argentina. Ooh, that could be a very intriguing theory and process to map out with logics. Chicken and egg problem, high motivation. Yes. And in some sense, it's also true and useful because the more chickens we have, the more eggs we have. On the other hand, if you're just looking at a very simple relationship, then there's got to be some limits to that growth. Sooner or later, we're going to run out of chicken feed. Okay, meta-level insights, looking just at the comments. Patty, you're just typing to the panelists. But this is different to something just going around and around. Isn't it more about life having seasons of growth and rest? Patty, very interesting question. I have to explore that some. Virtuous and vicious cycles, yes. The idea of positive thinking. Yeah, positive thinking leads to better results and better actions, which will lead to more positive thinking. And yet also, in contrast, disempowerment, because people think that no action is required. It's hopeless. Everything is predestined. That suggests that you become more self-aware, more self-able if you believe that you are self-able. Autopoiesis, external influences don't affect the internal system. That this should be built. I've done some studies and mapping of causal relationships in complexity theory also. You might, feel free, by the way, anybody, to email me if you want papers and all sorts of stuff like that. Okay, this is fantastic stuff. Let's go on to our last logic structure. This is the concatenated logic structure. I also like to think of it in terms of a transformative logic structure. And this is a very important one, more related to Tolman's logic and dialectic. Here we have one control regulating the cold water, one control regulating the hot water, and with those two controls, we get an output. You can determine both the temperature and the flow of the water relatively easily. It just seems to make more sense. It's more useful with our football team. If you have better coaching and you have better players, the team is more likely to win. And this is related to good scholarship, where you want to have more independent variables and fewer dependent variables. It's a very synthetic sort of thinking. Whether it's actually used all that much in the academic world is an open question, but hypothetically it should be used more there. So does this resonate with you? With more time and more money and more staff, we could do our work better. Yes, seems relatively irrefutable. Better paid, better consumption, more happy. Really? Good question. Very good question. If we're better paid and there's more consumption, we are more happy. Well, see, Carlos, we're asking, there's the structure side of it, which is what we're talking about here. Does the data back up the structure? That's a need for additional research. Who else? Where have you seen this in research, in coffee shops, conversations among family members? Does this resonate with you emotionally? What cultures have you seen this in? Used a lot in academic work, typical cross-sectional research studies, multiple impact factors. Good. Collective intelligence. Yes, there's a sort of synthesis going on here. Assume that most academic research is based on this theory. We hope so, but sadly, you've seen a lot that's not, especially philosophical, speculative papers. Study hard and behave well, then you'll get a good job. Yes, that seems like it would make more sense. You're talking about, more independent variables, better results. It didn't come my way. It's kind of interesting to me. Okay, let me throw the door open since comments have slowed down here. Let me throw open the doors to the synthetic thinkers, the meta level. What do we see just based on the comments? And I'm going to throw in mine first very quickly here, because it seems to me that there are fewer comments, fewer examples of this particular logic structure going on as compared to the others, where there were many, many examples. If teachers use the Beth method and the tools, students will be better involved. Sure. Academic is academic, and logic needs to be discussed in light of what we know how our cognition works. Yes, George, there's it's as in academic as with education and politics. I think we have a whole lot of pieces of the puzzle, ways to improve our processes that are simply not being used. Yes, and Lisbeth Helwig, analyzing complex problems, so many variables to take into account. That was our big messy map. There's a lot of people talk about Occam's razor, saying, oh, we need to have very small theories. The smaller the theory, the better. I don't think that is the case. There is no real study that I know of that says that is the case. Instead, Occam said something more like, we have to avoid irrelevant variables. And in terms of our complex societies, we don't really know which variables are relevant. If you drink Nespresso and your partner will look like George Clooney, product endorsements work this way. Ah, interesting. A more complex approach to marketing. I sometimes wonder if marketing isn't the most advanced of the social sciences. Coaching approach. Vincent, how is this the coaching approach? Tell me a bit more about that. And also, coaching from your perspective, what culture are you speaking from, and what culture is that used for coaching? Cannot use this model in a populistic way. Very interesting, Yvonne Schoper. It makes too much sense, perhaps. And please, Yvonne, what is your cultural background, and what culture do you see that happening? Or is populistic a cross-cultural technique? All logics but atomistics seem to presume that action leads to results. Strong belief in agency. Yes, we can. Sounds more inclusive, open to many views. Yes, it has a sense of bringing people in. Modeling, you try to identify the most important influencing factors by doing sensitivity analysis. Ante Buens, to all panelists, Lutz, I like your remark, but Ante, that should be to attendees also. And Nadia, you also wrote to all panelists, and that should be to all attendees also. Yes, this encourages teamwork. Yes, you start to see how everyone is interconnected. Situation analysis, yes. Open-mindedness on the behalf of society, yes. The binaries model brings another simulated reality that is only constructed from you accepting this logical structure. Carlos, I think that's an important part of all of this, simply being aware of the strengths and limitations of the logic structures that we're using. Yes, Yvonne, requires complex thinking, not just easy answers. Okay, very good. Wow. 6 thinking hats and other creativity, looking at it from, yes, Barbara, this is essentially more synthetic because it encourages better perspectives by drawing in multiple perspectives. Carlos, what is an example of self-censorship? Could you tell me just a little bit about that before we move on? What is the example of self-censorship? You are not able to use the whole. Yeah, it's tremendously limiting. This is, there's a whole nother presentation on how large our models need to be. And we need to work together to make larger theoretical models and to reach our goals to make good stuff happen in the world. Very good. Thank you very much. All those fantastic perspectives. So again, here we have our 5 structures of logic, and I deeply appreciate all your great insights and meta-level observations. We've looked at 5 kinds of causal structures, and in this wonderfully shared and collaborative exploration, feelings, insights, observations on looking at least these simple causal logic structures. How might these insights be useful for communication, learning, collaboration, research? It's kind of a vague question. Then I'll just move on because we are getting very close to our time. So I love all the insights and the range of possibilities. Might find it interesting that in our consulting work, we've used a mapping process, making much more complex maps, and to help organizations and coalitions to understand their world better. It's also being used in classrooms, as you might imagine. Students at the start of the semester or quarter make relatively simple maps about their understanding, and towards the end of the semester, they make more complex maps, which evaluates their understanding and also helps them to improve their understanding. It might be an interesting project to sit down with representatives of various cultures and see what kind of maps they make. Do some cultures tend towards the creation of linear maps while others are more circular? Don't know. Developing it. As with all work across cultures, a healthy reminder that not everyone thinks the same way. Yes. Barbara only compared and contrasted linear and circular logic. Yes, there's a few others to play with here, and also more complex relationships. So this leads us to suggest to me a few possible research questions. First, how might we understand cultures through their preferred structures of logic, at least starting with some simplistic ones like these and going off to who knows what might be more complex? How might we use these kinds of structures to improve communication, education, collaboration? There's some discussion about all of those along the way. Sales too, I suppose, and marketing. Um, if students create more complex maps as they learn, it's an interesting question as to whether cultures also evolve this way. And if so, what are the implications for the evolution of our cultures individually and our shared culture on this planet? Which way are we going? What's happening? And how might we improve our advancement? And we also use knowledge mapping, such as the Ask Matt game, to evaluate, integrate logic structures, and create more useful and collaborative logic maps of our cultural theories. So we can use this kind of mapping to evaluate and improve our theories of culture. So what research questions come up for you? Please type in the chat box, and especially if we have the members of the classroom still here, if you want to throw your questions and ideas for research out there, we'd love to read them. Just remember to send it to all panelists and attendees. Now look at Cantor's four-player model for answering the second question. Wonderful answer. Who has research questions? Can we have a go at the Ask Matt game? Email me, Claude. We'll talk about that. We've done some experimentation with doing it online, and that's certainly a possibility. If we understand, so get a bunch of people together to address a particular question or theoretical perspective, we could create something very interesting, and you'd have a publishable paper in about 2 hours, I think. How could cultures with different structures collaborate? Interesting. Yes, what are going to be the clash? You could look at the potential clashes and potential collaborations within and between structures and between cultures. Shirley, what is the Ask Matt game? Ask Matt game is a process of placing cardstock pieces of concepts and causal connection arrows on a table, and you get a higher score as you get a more complex and interconnected map. Drop me an email, send me an email, and I can send you a web link. In fact, it's at the start. It's the starting slide, and this is all being recorded. Oh, actually, I have meaningful evidence. If you type in Steve at askmattsolutions.com, let me type that in there. So there's my email address. You can send me, connect to me there, and I can send you relevant papers, and you can work off of those, or we can work off of the game. Let's see, the web address is simply all right, how to perform project management with two different cultures. Excellent. Yeah, very focused on the us. Is that us culture or United States culture? How do structures relate with moral foundations and development? Marique, I'm guessing Van Egmond, send me an email. I do have a paper that talks about causal structures in terms of ethics. Did an analysis of Gandhi's. Opposition between French and Russian cultures. This could be very interesting. Students are trying to learn and get more complex. Are cultures trying to do this? Oh, brilliant. It seems that the complexity is increasing accidentally, whereas our ability to deal with it is collapsing exponentially. Bastian, how do these logics change over generations? Oh, that would be marvelous. You sent that to panelists. Please share that with attendees also. Do different generations address different logics? Oh, excellent. Very interesting. How could student prepare for international experience where there are different structures? That sounds like it's very, if you know that you're heading from a circular culture to a linear culture, yes, you could rephrase your communication very quickly and easily there. By the way, we're 1 minute from ending here, so let me say, first, let me take that minute to say thank you for Barbara Covarrubia Venegas for introducing me to this wonderful group, to Saskia Laknar for her setting up the webinar, SIETAR Europa President Pari Namazi, as well as Linda Vignac and Mara De Moro for all your efforts. It's a wonderful group. Thank you all for your presentation. This has been very exciting, tons of fun. Please send me an email and or also to the email on the screen to office@SIETAR. And if we want to have an additional webinar where we work at creating a knowledge map online, that could be fun also. Kusunum sepan, merci, gracias, danke. I try to say thank you in a lot of languages, but my small mind cannot hold them all. Chokran. Now what language is that? I don't even know. Nanmrith. Thank you all so much for your fantastic cooperation. Arabic. So much to learn out there. Akos, yes, my few words in Hungarian are not too bad because my wife is of Hungarian descent, so I had to learn a little bit. Duku. Shukran. Oh, I think I have heard that before. See you at London on Saturday. Oh, if only. I certainly wish I could be in London on Saturday. London is just one of those wild towns. Wouldn't mind living here. Danke wel. Sounds Dutch, perhaps, and I'm sorry if it's typed in Cyrillic. I don't even have a clue. Not Bozema. Anyway, okay. Thank you all so much for your participation. I look forward to future collaborations, and hopefully you will all have seen what other people have posted and have the opportunity. Spazbo. Goodbye. Yes. Oh, goodbye. There's, hold on. I used to know that one. Das Bedonia. Thank you all so much. This is the end of the webinar. Goodbye. That's assuming, of course, I can find the right buttons to actually turn it off. There's an end meeting. Oh, what fun.